A crucial border crossing for Palestinians traveling in and out of Gaza opens. It was hoped that 50 people would be allowed to cross.
This number is not really realistic, and it's not what is needed.
Thousands of medical patients remain on a list to leave Gaza. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. What reopening the Rafah border crossing means for people in Gaza. Also in Cambodia, coastal communities want to stop commercial fishing boats from operating nearby.
Industrial trawlers were coming into the community fishery at night, dragging up loads of fish and other marine life.
Bad Bunny wins big at the Grammys. His music is also being studied in college classrooms.
This album allows us to sit down and focus on Puerto Rico, a place that most of my students don't fully understand.
All ahead today here on The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Thank you for joining us today. We begin in Rafah, the city in the Gaza Strip where the border crossing between Egypt and Gaza is now beginning to reopen, at least in a limited capacity. A Palestinian official today called the development a genuine window of hope. It was exactly that for Randa Abu Mustafa from Khan Yunis. She says her teenage son was injured by shelling a year and a half ago and that he needs to get out of Gaza to get medical care.
Thank God the border crossing is open, she says. Later, we heard from a producer in Gaza that Abu Mustafa and her son were able to leave Gaza through the Rafah border crossing. Israeli troops took control of the border terminal back in May of 2024. Since then, it has been mostly closed. The crossing was supposed to open up soon after the U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Hamas began last October. Then Israeli authorities delayed the reopening until the remains of the last hostage held in Gaza were repatriated. That happened last week. Now, some Palestinians in need of medical treatment are being allowed to enter Egypt, but the process is very slow. Fikr Shaltut is in Cairo. She's with the charity Medical Aid for Palestinians. We spoke earlier today to get a sense of the reality on the ground.
The crossing supposed to be operating normally, and it shouldn't be like a specific number per day to be allowed as long as there is a need for that. However, what we are hearing now, they're talking about 50 patients with some companion for them. So this is something that we heard. However, we still don't know if this number was able to leave actually from Gaza today. And even for those to go back into Gaza, again, they are talking only about 50 person to go back to Gaza. So, talking about a number of almost 18,000 people in the waiting list, not talking about other people from the community students, for example, people who wish to travel out of Gaza. They are also not allowing goods to go into Gaza or allowing emergency medical teams also to cross to be able to support the hospitals.
Even if enough people were crossing each day to hit this arbitrary cap of 50 people, there are more than, as you said, 18,000 people in Gaza who are sick or injured and need medical help. Tell us bluntly, is that enough, 50?
Not at all. If we're talking about allowing only 50% per day of these patients, so we need 1 year in order to evacuate all these, only the patients on the list. So this number is not really realistic, and it's not what is needed.
What is the range of assistance that is needed for some of these people in Gaza? I'm thinking broken limbs, cancers, and need for chemo. And what are the health consequences if they don't get that aid urgently?
Basically, they die. Unfortunately, again, according to the medical sources in the different hospitals in Gaza, they were talking about half of the kidney dialysis patients, they have died in Gaza. Many of the cancer patients, I cannot tell the exact number, but we know that many of the cancer patients, unfortunately, they have died unnecessarily because they were not able to receive the treatment inside Gaza, and they were not allowed, or they were waiting to be evacuated without success. So the impact is quite severe, and people are dying.
Fikr, I was going to ask you about goods and food and medical supplies. Is anything like that getting into Gaza right now?
Yeah, food supplies are going in, as far as I understand from my colleagues. Not everything, though, but I mean there are quite yani, good improvement in the delivery of food items into Gaza. But there is a plenty of items that not always there. For example, fresh food. If we're talking about meat and chicken and all the things that available in the local market is also only the frozen. Frozen meat or frozen fish. So yeah, there is improvement, but still it's not like what the population need.
I'm speaking with Fikr Shaltut in Cairo with the charity Medical Aid for Palestinians about the opening of the Rafah Crossing in Gaza. What do you think this slow movement of people represents with regards to the peace process?
To be honest, it's really important that Rafah is open now. So this is a good step. We are looking into that to see that the number of the people going in and out is increasing. More supplies should be going into Gaza, and that, there is like kind of free access via this crossing and all the crossings into Gaza, not only Rafah. So all these aspects would enable actually moving forward on this peace process.
Well, right. I mean, Fikr, you mentioned something a moment ago that seems important, that there are several crossings into Gaza, all closed. Why is there such a focus on Rafah, this one crossing?
Because it's the crossing that people can leave from Rafah. The other crossings, actually, all of them with Israel, none of them with Egypt, and all controlled by Israel. So Rafah is quite different, and as I mentioned, it's for the people in Gaza. It's the way they connect with the world. It's the crossing that connects Gaza with the world.
So when the new Gaza administrator, Ali Shath, says the opening of Rafah is a genuine window of hope, I mean, what is he talking about? How do you respond to that optimism?
For people in Gaza, Rafah is a lifeline for Gaza. The role of the technocrat committee, that they are coming in order to improve the living situation for the people, ensuring that people have access to electricity, water, communication, medical care. So in order for all this to happen, Rafah crossing and all the other crossings should be operating, free access is guaranteed through all these crossings.
That was Fikr Shaltut of Medical Aid for Palestinians.
There is an industrial fishing practice that destroys ecosystems and puts locals out of work. It's called bottom trawling. Weighted nets are dragged across the ocean floor, bringing up massive hauls of aquatic life. These industrial boats fish farther out at sea than local fishers can, and their big hauls deplete the local stock, even for all kinds of fish the companies don't even plan to sell. The UK and Ghana have both committed to bans on bottom trawling. One island community in Cambodia is trying something different. Locals there are dropping cement blocks in the water to snag the nets of those trawlers. Lila Goldstein spoke with fishermen in Cambodia.
46-year-old Chun Hong was a longtime fisherman on Koh Sadak, King Island, just 2 miles long off the coast of Cambodia. But now, his bright orange wooden boat is packed with neon life jackets and snorkeling gear for visitors like me.
Oh, he's showing us the snorkeling goggles he got?
Hong switched to tourism a few years ago. He wasn't able to support his family from fishing anymore, he tells me and Cambodian journalist Ung Sia.
Pulling up the anchor.
Hong brings us to a must-see spot right above a coral reef where floating snorkelers can observe schools of colorful butterfly fish, sea turtles, maybe even a seahorse if you're lucky.
He wants to preserve more coral reef for his community to attract tourism.
Industrial trawlers were coming into the community fishery at night, dragging up loads of fish and other marine life. Cambodia's fishermen reported catches declining by half from 2017 to 2022, according to the Asian Development Bank.
He said that he noticed the number of fish declined like about 7 years ago when there were a lot of illegal trawling at the time.
More than 2/3 of the catch coming from Cambodia's largest coastal provinces were caught by trawlers, according to government data from 2023. The Cambodian government has faced criticism for a lack of enforcement and allegations of accepting bribes to turn a blind eye to illegal fishing. The Ministries of Environment and Agriculture did not respond to requests for comment. Cambodian trawling boat owner Ta Ni spoke to us on the phone while he was out at sea. He's seen fisheries enforcement officers while on the water, but says his boat doesn't fish in protected areas. I don't know what else I could do to make a living. This is like farming rice on the ocean for us, he says. Yesterday, his boat didn't make any profit because he spent so much on diesel. Ni took out a bank loan to purchase his vessel. He says some days he struggles to break even because so many trawling boats are competing for fish on the water. And it's no joke. If one of his trawling nets gets caught on something underwater, like, say, a cement block, the net will snap when crew members go to pull it up, ripping up the mesh in multiple directions beyond repair. A new one costs upwards of $1,500. Local fishermen often go out on late-night patrols to try and stop the trawlers. But the residents on King Island are now taking a safer approach, with a project supported by the international NGO Fauna and Flora.
And what about these? What are these?
They're some sort of bivalve or shellfish. I don't know exactly.
Kieran Murray is a marine species project manager with the NGO. He comes along on a boat ride to show us where the team dropped a row of hollow cement blocks on the seafloor 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're right above one?
So it should be right about to the right.
Once we reach the GPS location, they drop the anchor to stop the boat, down 7 meters deep. This is a corridor where fishermen say trawlers have been spotted. 12 concrete blocks were deployed along the trawling route, each weighing over a ton.
Why is concrete a good material?
It's just really tough and heavy. It's nothing too complicated. It's just you have a really heavy piece of concrete that will last a long time. Saltwater is corrosive. Over time, it will degrade like all kinds of really tough materials.
The concrete may also have another side benefit. It can act as a home for new sea life.
Organisms such as corals can seed onto it and then grow from there. Then you are creating more complexity that more organisms can use as shelter and to promote biodiversity.
While their team hasn't dived down yet to see what's growing on the blocks, seagrass meadows have regrown near cement structures deployed in nearby Kep province. And data shows trawlers avoiding areas where those blocks were placed starting in 2018. Cambodia is currently working to deploy 5,000 underwater cement structures all across its coast. It's part of a $100 million initiative to restore the country's nearshore fisheries. Fishermen on King Island are hopeful they can see those positive results. Lauren Lai, a 57-year-old retired fisherman who still goes out on the water, says he's noticed more fish in areas close to the shore and thriving coral reefs since the blocks were dropped. And he knows that's good for the local economy, both for tourism and the fishing industry. Coral reefs can last for centuries, he says, as long as nothing disturbs them. For The World, I'm Lila Goldstein in Cambodia.
In Spain, a sports scandal and a tennis triumph. Those stories are coming up.
You're with The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. Football club Barcelona, one of the world's top soccer teams, has been giving its stadium a multi-million-dollar makeover. The price is really high, in part because of fines for labor violations. Foreign workers from Romania to Turkey say they have been lured to Spain with offers of high pay, only to be treated like indentured servants. The World's Jerry Haddon in Barcelona caught up with a group of Turkish laborers protesting outside Barca Stadium, known as Camp Nou.
Outside Barca's new stadium, a whistle blows. Actually, it's a lot of whistles. Blowing them are about 24 Turkish steelworkers. They're trying to get the attention of Barca's president, Joan Laporta, who's just shown up for a board meeting. Laporta, they chant, you jerk, try some manual labor. In Spanish, it rhymes. But either Laporta's wearing earbuds set to noise cancellation, or he just doesn't want to turn his head as he walks inside.
Burada Barça Stadyumu'nun inşaatını tamamladık. Çelik kondüksiyon işi yapıyoruz.
We built this stadium, one worker tells me, putting up all this steel for 21 months. The construction company has fired us for complaining about conditions and pay, he says. They owe us back pay and severance, he says, but we'll stay out here day and night until we get our money. Something's fishy, he says. The company isn't paying our wages or payroll taxes. That company is called Limak. It's Turkish. This project is Limak's first ever in Europe. It won the contract because its bid was the lowest, says reporter Elisenda Colei with the Barcelona newspaper El Periódico. She and her team found out perhaps why after investigating labor practices on the stadium remodel.
Nos encontramos en unas condiciones muy abusivas y muy irregulares.
We found abusive and irregular conditions, she says. Workers putting in extra hours without getting paid, men working without contracts, working weekends and not getting paid for that. The company took advantage of them, she says, because the workers either didn't know their rights or were too scared to speak up. The controversy began in 2023 when Limak hired a Hungarian firm to fly in hundreds of Romanian laborers. Each dawn, the men were bused to the site, worked 10-hour days, and were bused home. At their low-end hotel, they barely had time to eat something cold. They had no kitchen, then hit the hay.
A spus că ne dă 100 de euro pe zi, cazare asigurată, transport asigurat și 3 mese.
This Romanian worker wouldn't show his face in a documentary Colei's team made. We were promised 100 euros a day, he says, plus housing and meals. But the paychecks weren't arriving. The Romanians burned through their savings, then went on strike, like the Turks today. In retaliation, the company threatened to stop paying their hotel costs.
Esta gente se vio en esos hoteles sin poderlos pagar, en la calle y sin poder volver a sus casas.
Fearing being on the street, Colei says, most workers settled for one-way bus tickets home to Romania. She says only a few ever got fully paid. That's the fate these Turkish welders hope to avoid. One of Spain's largest labor unions, known as the Labor Commissions, is trying to help. Carlos del Barrio has been explaining to the men their rights here in Europe, and he bought them the whistles. He says there was a global uproar before the World Cup in Qatar in 2022 over exploited workers there, while here, he says, no one seems to care. It's easier to block out the moon with your thumb, he says, using a Spanish proverb to describe willfully ignoring reality. Abuses were more extreme on the stadium builds in the Middle East, he says, but this kind of exploitation must be denounced anywhere, including in democracies that are supposedly more advanced. Del Barrio says the union wrote to FC Barcelona demanding dialogue, but it never heard back. I reached out to and to the contractor, Limak, but neither has responded. The club may be ignoring the workers' complaints, but the regional government of Catalonia isn't. Workplace inspectors have fined Barca and its subcontractors around $7 million so far for labor violations, including overworking workers and not ensuring they have contracts and insurance. But nothing seems to change. Here again, reporter Elisenda Colei.
En realidad, el Camp Nou ocurre cada día y en cada barrio.
What's been happening at Camp Nou is a daily reality on virtually all major construction projects in Spain, she says. For example, the new high-speed train station in Barcelona or the metro expansion. It's a structural problem whereby the owner subcontracts out to companies whose only job is to find cheap labor. And those companies, she says, feed off the misery of migrants. In this case, she says, Barca is not legally responsible for the treatment of workers building its own stadium. But morally,
Un club que dice ser más que un club.
Barca's motto is, quote, more than a club, and it claims to stand for certain values, she says. You'd think it'd keep a close eye on how its stadium construction workers are treated. You'd think they'd care. But if Barca doesn't, the Turkish workers say, maybe its fans will. They come from near and far to visit. There's the stadium, but also the stores, the cafes, and an immersive reality experience called Virtual Dream, where you put on high-tech goggles and become a player. During the protest, a local resident stops to watch and read the picket signs. When she learns that the workers are no longer getting their rent paid, she gets mad. Let them fight for their rights, she says. They have to do this because if they're not respected, they'll get nowhere. Workers agree they have no choice. As for getting somewhere, it could end up being just a ticket back to Turkey. But for now, they say they'll hold out for all the money they're owed. For The World, I'm Sherry Haddon, Barcelona.
Tennis fans in Spain had reason to celebrate over the weekend.
Alcaraz conquers Australia.
The Spanish phenom Carlos Alcaraz won, or conquered, as you just heard the announcer say, the Australian Open. The 22-year-old is now the youngest ever to win all 4 men's titles in a single year. He managed to beat Novak Djokovic, a 20-year veteran, as the presenter on Center Court explained for Australian Open TV.
Once again this fortnight, he has shown us why this arena has been such a defining stage in his remarkable career. Please congratulate our finalist, Novak Djokovic.
Djokovic is 38, which in professional tennis is practically ancient. In fact, after the match, once the chants of Joko died down, he spoke a little bit like an elder statesman, offering these words to Alcaraz.
What you've been doing, it's... I think the best word to describe it is historic, legendary. So congratulations, and I wish you best of luck.
And for his part, Carlos Alcaraz had equally kind words for his competitor.
Wow. Obviously, first of all, I just wanted to talk about Novak. What you're doing is really inspiring. Not for only the players, the tennis players, but the athlete.
The previous record for youngest man to win a Grand Slam goes back to the year 1938. American Don Budge was also 22 when he won the French Open to complete 4 Grand Slam wins in a single year. But Carlos Alcaraz is about 3 months younger than Budge.
The youngest woman, by the way, to become a Grand Slam singles champion is still Martina Hingis. She did that in 1997 at the age of 16. You're with The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Residents of a fishing village in Mexico are being forced out by rising sea levels. One determined local is not giving up on her home.
That story is just around the corner, but first, some of the headlines we're keeping a beat on across the globe.
In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a mine controlled by the M23 militia collapsed after a landslide. This happened last week in the eastern part of the DRC. The disaster killed more than 200 people. The people who work there reportedly make just a few dollars a day mining coltan. The metallic ore is crucial for powering cell phones, laptops, and cars. The United Nations says M23 is using the profits from mines to fund their rebellion against the government in the DRC.
It's been 5 years since a military coup toppled the elected government of Myanmar. That sparked an era of civil war and human rights abuses there. Myanmar's military junta and its allies have now claimed victory in a general election that was set up to ensure that outcome, with voting shut down in numerous townships because of fighting in those areas.
And finally, Norway's crown princess, Mette-Marit, is not the only influential Norwegian who had connections to Jeffrey Epstein, the American convicted of child sex trafficking. But her name appears more than 1,000 times in files released on Friday. Several diplomats from Norway appeared in the files, as did a former prime minister. The head of the country's Green Party has called for an investigation, saying this shakes the trust in Norwegian society to its foundations.
Let's settle in now for a story from El Bosque, Mexico. It's a tiny fishing village on the country's Gulf Coast, once peaceful and picturesque, that is, before it began vanishing into the sea. From the Sea Change podcast at WWNO in New Orleans, Alvaro Cespedes introduces us to one woman determined to fight for the village's future as her neighbors flee.
Lupe Cobos was used to the sound of baseballs smacking against her roof almost every day. She lives in the center of El Bosque, a small fishing town on Mexico's Gulf Coast. Her home is right next to the park where people gather for quinceañera parties, weddings, neighborhood meetings, and soccer matches. But most of all, it was where the children of this town played the region's favorite sport, baseball.
Entonces siempre me enojaba porque como jugaban pelota, siempre la base de la primera la ponían como por ahí, ¿no?
I used to get so mad. When they played baseball, they put the first base over there and the foul balls would fall on my house.
Y yo decía, ¿cómo los odio?
And I'd say, I hate them so much.
Until very recently, the park used to be full of children playing baseball every day after school. Lupe took advantage of the games to sell some snacks to the spectators. Everyone knew she made the best. Now, that park is unkept. The pitchers played and the bases are covered with weeds and grass.
Pero hoy los extraño, me caían las pelotas.
But today, I miss them. The balls fell, I'd say I hate them, and now I miss them.
The children stopped going to school and the fishermen no longer live there. Just 2 years ago, almost the entire community had to quickly pack their things and flee. The town of El Bosque barely exists. Most of it is submerged under the Gulf of Mexico.
Teníamos lo básico, agua, luz, escuela, primaria.
We had the basics: water, electricity, a primary school, and a preschool for our children. The community was developing, but that doesn't change our lives, because then climate change came.
El cambio climático.
Lupe settled in El Bosque when she was only 12 years old. It was here that she grew up, fell in love, married, and started a family.
Y aquí empezó nuestra vida. Aquí nacieron mis hijas, crecieron mis hijos, ya tengo una nieta.
Our life began here. My daughters were born here. My sons grew up here. I already have grown grandchildren since I was a very young mom.
You probably have never heard of El Bosque. Even as Mexicans, El Bosque is little known. It's one of hundreds of tiny fishing communities scattered along the Mexican Gulf Coast where people have maintained their way of life for generations. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how the weather patterns work in El Bosque, because that helps explain why the village lost its battle with the sea. The fishing communities along the Gulf of Mexico, especially those in the Mexican state of Tabasco, are governed by a phenomenon locally known as El Norte. These are colder air currents coming from the north that create tropical storms and cause the tide to rise several meters. When the storm passes, the sea returns to its original state. People have lived with the rising and falling of El Norte tides for as long as anyone here can remember. But not too long ago, the pattern began to change. The sea was gaining ground, inching closer to their homes, something they had never imagined possible. Lupe remembers it well.
Ya no se regresó el mar. Y ahí vimos que algo estaba pasando, o sea que nuestra vida se iba, nos enfilábamos a perderlo todo. Hay gente que perdió todo.
Our life was slipping away. We were going to lose everything. It was a shock, truly. The sea would usually advance about 5 meters due to El Norte, but we had enough land to hold it back. Then it would recede. It was dynamic. The problem was when the sea moved forward 10 meters, it stayed 10 meters forward.
Then, one winter, while the village slept, the waves came through their windows, ruining furniture, fridges, important documents. And though it seemed like it was a catastrophe that made no sense at all, actually, it was the result of a natural process called coastal erosion. That's the gradual wearing away and retreat of the shoreline due to factors such as waves, tides, ocean currents, and wind. And El Bosque is especially vulnerable to coastal erosion because of its unique location. It is located right where the Grijalba River, one of Mexico's most abundant rivers, meets the sea. You can't tell where one begins and the other ends. As the sea rose, so did the river, endangering the community from both sides.
And we have a lot of rivers here. It's like a huge delta. It's in Mexico, 1/3 of the water of all Mexico crosses here.
This is Dr. Liliana Gama. She's a local conservation biologist who has been studying El Bosque for decades.
I think that the main problem here is climate change, because the rains and the winds and the waves are increasing in their impacts and are increasing in their frequency. And that's what climate change is bringing to our area.
El Bosque is a small strip of land which makes it even more vulnerable because people cannot move further inland as the sea rises. El Bosque started losing the few square miles of ground that it had.
When we first went there, it was about 2005, and the loss wasn't that fast, but it started increasing. It got faster each year. But the worst part was the last 10 years.
And by 2019, Lupe tells me it was clear that the village was in danger.
Pero en 2018 para el 19,
By 2019, the sea came about 40 meters inland, right up to the houses. And I said, something's happening. That's not normal. I read. I looked for answers. Everybody was doing the same. We gathered here and asked, what's happening? Is El Bosque going to disappear? That's when the uncertainty began.
Feeling scared, Lupe wanted to understand what was going on and what she could do to save her community. Everyone in town felt the same, but they couldn't really pinpoint what was going on. Like most adults in El Bosque, Lupe had never heard about climate change. But no matter what it took, Lupe was determined to save the place she loved so much.
I never imagined that overnight I'd become the face of the community, and that later it would even become a kind of job, with all the work we've done to get people to notice us. And that meant I had to learn more too. Like what to say, how to talk about the issue.
Lupe started talking with experts and activists to learn about climate change and how coastal erosion is devastating coastlines.
Mi nombre es Guadalupe Cobos Pacheco. Vengo de la comunidad del Bosque, una comunidad de pescadores allá en Tabasco, México.
That's Lupe speaking at a recent conference in Oaxaca, Mexico. Lupe often travels throughout Mexico, meeting scientists and activists from around the world. When just a few years ago, she would never leave her town. Every chance she gets, Lupe speaks passionately and eloquently about the defense of her community, her territory, and her traditions.
El bosque se denominaba como bosque porque su característica era esa, los pinos.
She uses her voice to demand help for the emergency she and her neighbors are living through. I meet Lupe at her house in El Bosque. The shoreline is now just 20 steps away from her front door. We walk around what's left of the village. The sea has swallowed everything in its path. It erased more than 3 blocks of paved streets, houses, streetlights, sewer systems, telephone lines, and trees. Aquí, por ejemplo, esta casa que ya se ve un poquito, pues, ya abandonada.
Ya abandonada.
¿Aquí quién vivía?
Esta era una iglesia evangélica que ya nada más quedan sus estructuras.
This used to be an evangelical church. Now, only the structure is left. This was a health clinic. And after, this church was the street just ahead. So you can still see the light poles. This was a street, a real street.
El Bosque used to have around 150 houses. Now, less than 10 remain. The shoreline advanced so much that today the waves crash against the school's facade and water constantly seeps through its windows.
A esta escuela teníamos, cuando empezó la erosión costera, teníamos como 50 niños, 50 alumnos.
This was our school. When the coastal erosion began, we had around 40 to 50 students in 1st through 6th grade. Now, there's nothing left.
The sand completely covers what once were those 2 classrooms. On their ceilings, there are 2 fans with blades so damaged and rusted that they are now facing downward, as if the relentless sun beating on the roof had melted them. The school had no other choice but to close in 2022. Staring at the building where her children learned to read and write, Lupe tells me she hasn't gotten over its loss.
Está sumergida en el mar. Le llegó con todo, tenía unos ventanales de vidrio bien bonitos.
It's underwater now. The sea took it all.
The case of coastal erosion affecting the community of El Bosque is not an isolated one. Villages on the coasts of South America, Europe, Australia, and the US too are threatened by coastal erosion. But this problem seemed to not have affected Mexico until El Bosque. And Lupe had spent years trying to bring attention to her village, to the imminent disaster that would come knocking at her door if people just stood and stared. And so far, the authorities seemed not to care. But then one day, during the daily press conference by the president, Lupe's hard work seemed to pay off. At the podium was Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
Ahí vamos.
President of Mexico from 2018 to 2024.
¿Quién sigue?
López Obrador also happens to be from the same state as El Bosque, Tabasco. And in the audience was Arturo Contreras, a journalist who had been reporting on coastal erosion in El Bosque.
En la desembocadura del río Grijalba, en Tabasco, hay una pequeña comunidad que se llama El Bosque.
In front of all the politicians and journalists, Contreras says, there's a small community called El Bosque, and the sea has started to eat away its land. He says that the village reached out to the Ministry for Agrarian and Urban Development for help. But the people of El Bosque were told that the agency didn't have enough money. And then Contreras asks,
Entonces, pues ¿qué respuesta hay para...
So, what's your answer to this community? President López Obrador had directed massive infrastructure investments to his home state of Tabasco. Roads, bridges, even an enormous oil refinery. But he seemed surprised by what this journalist had just told him. In a most fortunate coincidence, López Obrador's Secretary of Infrastructure was sitting right next to him, and he was planning to visit the region to inaugurate a new bridge later that same day. The president turned to his secretary and pronounced a sentence that would change everything for El Bosque.
Entonces, te lo encargo.
Te lo encargo can translate to please take care of it. And with that phrase, the president of Mexico gave an ambiguous instruction to his Secretary of Infrastructure. Lupe and her friends considered this a victory. Their cry for help had been heard at the very top. And from that day on, what was happening in El Bosque started to attract attention. A lot of attention.
Una tierra prácticamente engullida por el mar, en el estado de Tabasco, en el sur de México, los residentes de la localidad costera de El Bosque observan horrorizados cómo el mar va ganando cada vez más terreno, llevándose por delante las casas en las que ellos y sus familias crecieron.
En 2 años, la comunidad El Bosque en el municipio de Frontera en Tabasco perdió 500 metros de costa el mar destruyó 30 de las 70 casas de los pescadores.
After that press conference, the government of the state of Tabasco did something that had never been done before in Mexico. It recognized the people of El Bosque as displaced due to the effects of climate change. Having won this official designation, the people of the fishing community were now subject to relocation, arranged and paid for by López Obrador's government. In November 2024, they officially granted 51 houses to the newly displaced residents of El Bosque, located in the city of Frontera, about 7 miles inland.
Alvaro Céspedes there, reporting for the WWNO podcast Sea Change. Tomorrow, we'll make that journey 7 miles inland from El Bosque to meet former residents of the tranquil fishing village that is now mostly underwater.
The World is produced by GBH and PRX, broadcasting weekdays from the Nan and Bill Harris studio in Boston and from the Department of Communication at UC San Diego. Find us online anytime at theworld.org. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
The World is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. By the Lumina Foundation, committed to a fair, universal system for learning beyond high school that offers every American the chance for a better life. LuminaFoundation.org. By the PRX Ambassador Council, whose members include Judy Piggott, the Gruber Family Foundation, the Schmidt Family Foundation, and Gavin Salmonese, LLC. The World's theme music is composed by Ned Porter. The World is a co-production of GBH Boston and PRX.